It is commonly known that Tolkien disliked allegory. I dislike allegory, the conscious and intentional allegory, yet any attempt to explain the purpose of myth or fairy tale must use allegorical language. And, of course, the more life a story has, the more readily will it be susceptible of allegorical interpretations, while the better a deliberate allegory is made, the more nearly will it be acceptable just as a story. But what does this mean, and why? And to what extent does he detest it? Let's go back to the definition of allegory. What is allegory? An allegory is defined as the expression by means of symbolic fictional figures and actions of truths or generalizations about human existence. Allegories are used in works such as George Orwell's Animal Farm or C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, where the events and characters would stand for something else. Tolkien would take a few inspirations such as his Catholic faith, his life and home country in England, and his time in World War I and the rise of the Industrial Revolution he had experienced, but that would differ greatly from allegory in that while it involved real-life examples, the author wouldn't purposely dominate telling the reader to think of these things while reading his works. Other arrangements could be devised according to the tastes or views of those who like allegory or topical reference, but I cordially dislike allegory in all its manifestations, and always have done so since I grew old and wary enough to detect its presence. I much prefer history, true or feigned, with its varied applicability to the thought and experience of readers. I think that many confuse applicability with allegory, but the one resides in the freedom of the reader and the other in the purpose domination of the author. An author cannot, of course, remain wholly unaffected by his experience, but the ways in which a story germ uses the soil of experience are extremely complex, and attempts to define the process are at best guesses from evidence that is inadequate and ambiguous. While Middle-earth may seem to remind the reader of certain aspects of Tolkien's life, and quite possibly their own lives as well, none of the aspects would stand directly for something else. Leaf by Niggle is commonly cited as an allegory despite Tolkien arguing against it and the story being completely allegorical. It could also be implied that Leaf by Niggle was something where allegorical language is used in order to explain the purpose of myth and fairy tale as he mentioned earlier. I should say that in addition to my tree love, it was originally called The Tree. It arose from my own preoccupation with The Lord of the Rings, the knowledge that it would be finished in great detail, or not at all, and the fear, near certainty, that it would be not at all. The word had arisen to darken all horizons, but no such analyses are a complete explanation even of a short story. Niggle was supposed to represent Tolkien himself, in that both had a project that they cherished but were busy with other things that seemed to interfere with them, Niggle with painting and Tolkien with writing Lord of the Rings. However, it still can seem to lean more towards the definition of applicability than it would the definition of allegory, as Tolkien explains. He was probably thinking that his symbolism used in here doesn't involve the purpose domination of the author. It's not to say that the claims of allegory were wrong, as one could conclude the similarities between Tolkien's life and Niggle's. While Tolkien didn't like allegory in certain stories and fantasies, it could be a possibility that Leaf by Niggle didn't fit into the type of story he believed it to be inappropriate for, as Leaf by Niggle still provides a sense of freedom of interpretation and applicability. While it seems to be an allegory, it is not about outside issues, but more drawn from his own personal experience.